I had been hiding my secret romance with my best friend's brother for 5 long years. He spoiled me rotten, showering me with everything a girl could dream of. But there were two unbreakable rules: no going public and no entering his forbidden red room. Yet, when the news of his arranged marriage hit me like a storm, I couldn't resist anymore. I finally stepped into that mysterious red room I had avoided for half a decade. On the desk lay dozens of photo albums, each filled with images of a woman who looked strikingly similar to me. 7 out of 10, at least. She was the Korean heiress he was set to marry, Stella Alonso. In the drawer, a thick stack of airline tickets, numbering in the thousands. Flipping through the dates, the truth crashed over me like waves on a yacht in the Mediterranean. For these 5 years, he had been jetting off every week on his private jet to see his true white moonlight abroad. It turned out this entire love affair had been nothing but a cruel deception from start to finish. After a long, heavy silence, I sent a voice message to my father. "Dad, I'm willing to go back for the marriage alliance." I restored everything I had disturbed in the red room and left, heading back to my own place. That night, I spent hours preparing my resignation papers. The next day at the office, I headed straight to HR. After all, I had no habit of staying on as my ex's secretary. I grabbed the resignation form and slipped it into a pile of documents needing his signature. Pushing open the door to the billionaire CEO's penthouse office in the heart of New York, I froze at the sight before me. In front of others, the always aloof Christian Grey was now half kneeling on the ground, gently massaging the feet of the woman before him. Hearing the noise, they both turned. Christian's face shifted instantly, but he quickly composed himself. He started to speak, but Stella Alonso beside him frowned and chimed in first. As his secretary, I lacked manners, barging in without knocking. Words of explanation hovered on my lips, but they wouldn't come out. How could I say this was a privilege Christian had once granted me? Now with his fiancée in the picture, it felt impossible to voice. I turned to Christian, but his gaze averted. He cleared his throat and spoke in a businesslike tone, asking what I was there for. I replied that there were files for him to sign. After a pause, I handed them over. He flipped through, signing swiftly with his mott-blank pen. When he reached the last page, my resignation, I bit my lip, anxious if he'd approve. Suddenly, Stella let out a startled cry. Turning, I saw the water glass tipping over, scalding hot liquid splashing onto her hand, her eyes turning red with pain, looking so pitiful. Christian panicked, forgetting the documents, hastily signing the last page before scooping her up and rushing out of the office. Watching their backs vanish through the door, a whirlwind of emotions churned inside me. I gathered the files and took my resignation back to HR. After processing it, I worked a bit longer at my desk. During lunch break, as I headed downstairs, my dad called right on time, asking when I'd returned since I'd agreed to the marriage. A month from now, I said, my resignation needed that long to finalize. He agreed and hung up. Overhearing, colleagues swarmed around, buzzing with surprise. They asked why I was quitting. I paused, then admitted without hiding. I was going home to get married. So sudden, they exclaimed. My hometown was up north, and who knew when we'd meet again? They suggested a farewell dinner after work. Hearing their chatter, I smiled and didn't refuse. That evening, after the group meal, I stood on the curb hailing a cab when a sleek Maybach pulled up. The window rolled down, revealing Christian's face. He commanded me to get in, concise as ever. But I didn't comply as he expected. Instead, I walked along the road, pretending not to see him, trying to flag another ride. Christian's expression darkened. He started the car, trailing behind me, causing taxis to swerve away. After the third one ignored me, I finally relented and opened his door. Inside, his face showed helplessness. He claimed he'd explained already, that things with Stella were just an act. Why was I angry again? I insisted I wasn't angry, staring ahead calmly. He refused to believe it, pressing why I hadn't gotten in earlier. I paused, then curved my lips into a mocking smile. Wasn't it him who insisted our relationship stay secret? With colleagues nearby, how could we keep it hidden if they saw? My barbed words didn't anger him. Instead, he smiled more. He said I was clearly upset, caring deeply. It was all pretend with Stella. He wouldn't really marry her. Once it ended, he'd announced to everyone that I was the one he loved most. Expecting my move tears, I just stared at him blankly. After a long moment, I asked if he meant it. His gaze faltered, heart pricked with guilt, avoiding an answer. It was as expected. Even if he replied, I'd know it was just a lie to coax me. The next day at work, Christian messaged me to go to a bridal shop. I couldn't refuse yet, so I took a cab there. Spotting his Maybach outside, I approached without stopping. The window was down, revealing the two inside locked in an embrace, lips meeting passionately. Noticing my approach, Stella pushed him away, face flushed with shyness, saying someone was coming. Seeing me, Christian's expression stiffened. Stella had used his phone to summon a secretary for the wedding dress fitting, not expecting it to be me. He suggested softly to change to someone else, calling me clumsy and unfit to care for her. But Stella smirked, insisting I was fine. Why was I an exception when she'd called any secretary? Christian couldn't resist her. Or rather, he never firmly refused her demands. Even as she deliberately tormented and humiliated me during the fitting, he sat by watching, never intervening. Like when she made me half kneel to lace her wedding shoes for half an hour. Or sending me running from lower Manhattan to uptown, east side to west, buying food. Then holding up each heavy wedding gown by hand until my arms trembled, forbidding me to lower them. Christian watched my disheveled state, his expression flickering oddly. Stella caught it, pouting coquettishly, asking if he thought she was too mean. He masked his face, turning to her with eyes full of tenderness. No, secretaries were meant to be used. He coaxed her a bit longer until his phone rang. He stepped outside to answer. Once he was gone, Stella's gaze fixed on me, lips curling into a mocking smile. She'd wondered why I looked so much like her. Now she knew I was her substitute. She advised me to drop any ideas, as she and Christian were getting married. I replied calmly, without lifting my head, assuring her I wouldn't compete. Stella scoffed, disbelieving. A clerk approached then, saying the dress and shoes were selected. Only matching jewelry remained. She nodded, but her eyes lit on the necklace around my neck, gleaming with desire. Imperiously, she demanded it, asking how much to sell it to her. I froze, face turning cold. It wasn't for sale. She insisted it must be hers since she liked it. Surprised by my refusal, her face hardened, and she lunged to snatch it. Caught off guard, she yanked it off, the chain snapping under force. The star pendant shattered on the floor. My mind blanked. I slapped her hard, leaving a red palm print on her cheek. She touched her face in disbelief, exclaiming that I dared hit her. Christian returned to this scene, his face changing. He rushed forward, shoving me away to protect her. I stumbled, unable to dodge, my forehead smashing into a table corner. Sharp pain surged, blood trickling down. Touching it, my fingers came away crimson. Following Stella's pointing finger, Christian saw the broken necklace. His expression froze, but turning to me, his eyes held impatience. It was just a little thing. Was hitting someone necessary? His accusation was the final straw crushing me, tears welling up. I didn't respond, just crawled to the shattered pieces, picking them up one by one. A little thing? He knew full well it was my mother's heirloom. Christian held Stella and left, abandoning me there, red-eyed and alone, gathering the fragments before staggering away. I took a few days off, getting stitches at the hospital. Christian didn't come home those days. My wound barely healed when my best friend, Gianna Romano, Christian's sister, called. She'd seen earrings in Paris that suited me perfectly. She was back today, come over for dinner, and she'd give them to me. Knowing I was leaving soon, it was time to say goodbye. I didn't refuse, tidied up, and went. Meeting her, Gianna bubbled with excitement, linking arms and chatting about her travels. I listened quietly until after dinner, when I mentioned going home to Mary. The news struck her like lightning. So sudden, she said. What about my previous boyfriend? I shook my head, I didn't want him anymore. Seeing my downcast look, she guessed what happened, angry and heartbroken. She hugged me tight, saying good riddance to a guy who kept a secret for years. But I was her best friend. Going so far north, when would we meet again? The impending separation saddened us both. Gianna even cried passionately in my arms. Christian arrived home to this sight, commenting helplessly on grown women hugging and weeping. Gianna straightened, eyes red, explaining I was leaving to marry, so why couldn't she cry? Hearing that, Christian's heart jolted. He turned to me sharply, face darkening. I was getting married? Yes, I met his gaze without evasion. If he had time, he was welcome to attend. His face sank further. He grabbed my hand to leave. Gianna watched confused, asking what he was doing. He paused, smoothly saying he was heading out anyway and would drop me home. I couldn't refuse in time. He dragged me to the car. Once inside, he pinned me against the seat, face livid. He knew I was still mad about last time, but joking about marriage was too far. I smiled, surprised he didn't believe my honest confession, thinking it was temper. I wasn't joking. He was marrying too, so why couldn't I? He reiterated that it was fake with Stella. But I interrupted. Fake, yet he took her dress shopping? Fake, yet he let her humiliate me? Question after question left him speechless. After a long silence, he rubbed his brow wearily. With so many eyes on him, the act had to be complete. He knew I'd suffered, bear it a bit longer, and he'd compensate me fully. I stayed serious, repeating I was really going home to marry. He still didn't take it seriously, just handed me a box from the side. Fine, he'd had the necklace repaired. No more such jokes. Whatever, I thought, too tired to argue. If he didn't believe, so be it. That evening, Dad messaged about selecting wedding dresses and rings, sending photos that dazzled me. Choosing intently, Christian emerged from his shower, asking casually what held my attention so. I paused, then told the truth. Wedding dresses and rings. He frowned suddenly. Hadn't we agreed not to mention that? Seeing his anger and irritation, I didn't explain more, just turned over and slept, pushing everything aside. The next morning, Dad sent a number, the groom's. Contact him if needed. Chat since we're marrying. Copying it to contacts, I realized I didn't know his name. Thinking briefly, I typed in a few words, future husband. Time hadn't reached a month. I still worked normally. Departments organized a joint mixer. Mine included. After work, we headed to the booked private room. But with Christian joining, everyone tensed, either fading into the background or sipping champagne in corners. The atmosphere stayed dead until someone suggested truth or dare. Games sparked life. Even Christian played. He lost first round. Given his status, dares stayed mild. They settled on viewing his photo album. He complied, opening it. The album overflowed with Stella's solo photos. Onlookers teased, admiring their bond. All future wife's pics. Their love must be real. Shooting those took time. Amid the banter, Stella blushed coyly, asking when he'd taken them. She hadn't known. Christian smiled without answering, his gaze piercing through the crowd to me. Fearing a scene, he discreetly messaged, "It's all fake, don't mind." I smirked bitterly. At this point, true or false mattered little. Soon, round 2 started. I lost. Against me, they relaxed, daring boldly. Call the first contact in your phone book. I pulled out my phone, opening contacts. Top 1, the newly added future husband. Colleagues buzzed excitedly, missing Christian's face turning ashen behind. He stood abruptly, silencing the cheers. Moments later, a manager bravely asked what was wrong. Bored, he said, let's end it. He left straight with Stella. With his word, the party fizzled. I lowered my eyes, pocketing the phone, following the group out. Downstairs, hailing a cab home, that familiar Maybach stopped again. Window down, he addressed me but explained to Stella beside. As Gianna's best friend, he'd drop me too. Not wanting trouble, I got in. The car merged into traffic, stopping at the Alonso Villa. Stella bid him reluctant farewell, watching him go. Christian returned, yanking open the back door, pulling me into a fierce embrace, kissing hard. Stunned by his sudden move, I pushed him away. His eyes darkened, holding unreadable complexity. He said once temper was fine, twice or thrice lost charm. I insisted no temper. I was truly marrying. He disbelieved, returning to the driver's seat. Pausing, he added, "Fine, a few days off for you." He'd accompany properly. No more fuss. True to word, he stayed home those days, not leaving. But I overheard him in the study, phoning about business, mentioning a birthday rose occasionally. Neither our birthdays were near, obviously for her. If busy, go handle it. No need to babysit me. I stood at the door, eyes calm on the man inside. It halted his breath. After staring long, he yielded, confessing. Yes, planning Stella's birthday party. With eyes watching, appearances mattered. Perhaps opening up, he handled things openly now, no hiding from me. The day arrived soon. He didn't invite me. I didn't want to go, staying home alone. But shortly after he left, Stella called. Christian was proposing today but forgot the ring at home. As secretary, deliver it. I refused outright. Inconvenient. Find someone else. She taunted if I feared fainting at the proposal's sight, heartbroken. Her smug tone silenced me a moment. I didn't respond to that but agreed. Send the address. After getting it, I went to the study. Finding the ring in the drawer, my finger traced the inner engraving, S.A. It was made for Stella from the start. How fitting. I took the ring, cabbing to the birthday venue. Another villa under Christian's name, overlooking the Hudson. Stella on the 3rd floor. Without thinking, I headed up. But at the 2nd floor turn, a burly man lunged at me fiercely. Unprepared, he pinned me tight. I tried to scream for help, but he leaned in for a kiss. Beauty, don't struggle. Stella hired me specially for a night with you. Shout all you want, no one's coming. Let me taste. Heart pounding, I dodged his advance, thrashing wildly. If you touch me, the Gray and Steele families won't let you off. He laughed maniacally. Worst case, prison time. Before finishing, I smashed a vase over his head. Pain hit. He touched blood, eyes rolling back, fainting. Shaking all over, I fled the room, rushing to the banquet hall. Stella stood center, surrounded by admirers. Rage boiled. I charged her way. A crash echoed, champagne tower toppling. Exclaims rose as Stella lost balance, falling into the mess. Wine soaked her gown, legs gashed by glass shards. Christian rushed in, eyes splitting with fury at the sight. He scooped up her pale face, glancing at me once, saying nothing, then turned and left. Whispers buzzed around. I pursed my lips, feeling no regret. I wasn't wrong. I cabbed back to the villa. That night, Christian stormed in, voice thick with suppressed rage. He'd said the party was facade. Couldn't I endure a few days without troubling Stella? His blame tightened my lips, eyes stubborn on him. Me causing trouble? She hired someone to violate me. Hallway cameras, check if doubting. Enough. My explanation didn't sway him, brows furrowed deeper. Stella wasn't like that. Don't drag her in if I'd provoked elsewhere. Now apologize to her with me. I did nothing wrong, why apologize? I won't go. He insisted, trying to drag me to the hospital. I broke free, eyes filled with disappointment or disbelief. Seeing my stubbornness, his face turned distant, cold. No more debate. He called bodyguards to escort me there. Seeing Christian, Stella flung into his arms, tears flowing, looking utterly wronged. He glared at me coldly, as if I were unforgivable. Throat choked, no defenses came. Fine, I apologize. Sorry, said. I avoided their eyes, broke from guards, and walked out. Christian hadn't expected my swift change. Watching my back, unexplained panic rose. But Stella sobbed in his arms, he shifted focus back. Next days, he busied caring for her, not returning. But daily, gifts appeared at the villa door. I took none, packing and donating them untouched. Next morning, post-breakfast, his call came. Why donate all gifts? It was my fault. Was coaxing me wrong now? His tone weary. Stop fussing. You weren't this hard before. I didn't reply, hand paused. Silence, then Stella's voice faintly, so bitter. I chuckled lightly, speaking finally. Focus on caring for Miss Alonso. I hummed swiftly, no chance for response. After breakfast, I dressed and went to the office for final handover. Back home, I packed luggage. Evening, Christian entered with more gifts, demeanor less hostile. My expression calm, no fight. He said his and Stella's wedding neared. Parents wanted her moving in. Me staying here improper. Move to the Blue Bay Villa temporarily, okay? I replied faintly, understood. Seeing my quick agreement, thinking me sensible, he offered to help pack. But spotting the open suitcase half-filled, his pupils contracted. Why packing already? Head down, tone still calm. I'd said many times, going home to marry. Hearing, his suspended heart eased. He rubbed brows. Stop. I'm exhausted lately. Once over, I'd go public with us, okay? I nodded faintly again, packing the last item, wheeling the suitcase to the door. He offered to drive me. His car waited outside. I didn't refuse. Let him take me to the airport this time. Maybe he'd believe. As we started, his phone rang. Stella. He hesitated, stepped away to answer. Returning, he hailed a cab instead, explaining, urgent matter, cab for you. He'd join later. I watched calmly, nodding without words. At the northern airport, I wheeled my suitcase through the crowd, exiting the hall to spot the waiting man. Tailored suit accentuated his tall, lean frame. Refined features. Standing still, he drew stares. Then he seemed to see me. Brows relaxed, ice melting. He strode over, extending a hand with a slight smile. Miss Steele, hello. I'm Xavier Knight, your marriage partner. She's mine. Every breath she takes belongs to me. No one else can have her, not even in their dreams.